Hello there, welcome to ITV News Meridian.
Tonight's headlines here in the southeast. More P&O protests. Dover is described as a port of shame as 7 agency workers are sacked for breaking alcohol rules.
So they are in a position to sail them safely with decent terms and conditions. The vessels should continue to be boycotted by haulage companies, by travel companies and by passengers who are considering using these vessels to go on the holidays in the summer.
1 in 3 families facing fuel poverty, the grim reality of the cost of living crisis and what it means for people here.
Honouring a young father from Sussex who died suddenly from a heart attack. His widow campaigns to save lives in his memory.
And a mother duck's mission to get her family to safety helped by the kindness of strangers. Good evening. Some of the 800 sacked P&O ferries workers headed to the Port of Dover today to protest at their treatment and to call for improved safety.
2 P&O ships remain in dock at the Kent port, having failed another inspection from Maritime and Coast Guard Agency. And it's been revealed that 7 agency staff have now been sacked for breaches of the company's alcohol rules.
Well, let's cross now to Joe Caution, who's been following developments. Joe, a lot of very angry ex-workers gathered again today.
Yes, that's right, Matt. A month on from the sacking of 800 P&O staff, and you can see several of their ferries still detained here in Dover, and the company doesn't appear to be free of all controversy just yet. 7 agency seafarers, as you say, dismissed for working whilst under the influence of alcohol. Now, a P&O ferries spokesperson confirmed this news earlier and told us the safety of their passengers and crew is their foremost priority, and they continue to operate a zero tolerance policy towards drinking whilst on duty. Now, this has reignited calls from the R&T union at their latest protest here in Dover today to boycott the company altogether because of safety concerns. Not that P&O want that though. They want to see and welcome customers back on their ferries as soon as they are deemed safe to sail again. But Darren Proctor, the RNT's National Secretary, pointed to failures that were picked up during an inspection of another of P&O's ferries. He says the safety doesn't necessarily relate to the state of the vessels themselves, but more the quality and the training of the seafarers on board.
And if you're bringing in seafarers of 12, 13, 14 different nationalities who are not familiar with this particular sector, who are not familiar with this crossing and are not familiar with that particular vessel, then it's a recipe for disaster, and that's what we found to date. So, until we've got familiarised seafarers on board them vessels on decent rates to pay that are well rested, then there's going to be, fatalities and a danger to other sea users.
31 failures picked up on the inspection that Darren was talking about there. Just shows you how seriously the Maritime and Coast Guard Agency are taking these inspections, and P&O say they welcome the extra scrutiny from them. Back to the protests now. Far fewer demonstrators than we saw here last month, mostly because many of the seafarers who lost their jobs have now accepted packages from P&O or have new jobs. But one man who wanted to be here today but couldn't was John Lansdowne, a former chef for P&O ferries. He is suing the company for £76 million for unfair dismissal. And he told us this latest scandal involving agency workers over the weekend should be the final nail in the coffin for bosses, and is calling on them to resign.
Recognise the consequences of your grotesque actions. It's still not too late for you to do the right thing, all of you, and resign.
Well, this all started with sackings that were meant to be a cost-cutting exercise for P&O. They said at the time it is costing them £1 million every day that they can't sail these boats. A month on, no sign of the Spirit of Kent, the Pride of Canterbury, the Spirit of Britain, the Pride of Kent and the Pride of Canterbury going anywhere just yet. But the big question tonight is whether they accounted for this when they let 800 seafarers go.
OK, Joe Caution in Dover for us this evening. Thank you very much indeed.
In other news tonight, more than a third of repeat knife crime offenders in Sussex and Kent are not being jailed. A report compiled by the Labour Party found that 41% of offenders in Sussex and 36% in Kent weren't in prison. In response, a government spokesperson said judges decide sentences and those caught carrying a knife are more likely to be sent to jail than they were a decade ago. They added that new laws have been put in place to see more repeat offenders face time behind bars. Now, it's been a dramatic day in Westminster. Less than an hour ago, the Prime Minister apologised to MPs for breaking COVID rules. Live to our political correspondent Phil Hornby now. Phil, what did Boris Johnson actually say?
Well, you're right, Stacey, it was dramatic and it was unprecedented. The Prime Minister came to the Commons to apologise for breaking COVID rules and also to apologise for reassuring the House of Commons, goodness knows how many times over recent months, that no rules had been broken. This is what Mr Johnson said.
It did not occur to me then or subsequently that a gathering in the Cabinet room just before a vital meeting on COVID strategy could amount to a breach of the rules. I repeat, that was my mistake and I apologise for it unreservedly.
As you'd expect, lots of opposition MPs called for him to resign. One Tory MP said the same thing. You wonder how many were actually thinking it. But what about the voters? What do they make of it all? We were out and about today in Hythe to ask people there.
I don't feel he should be in such a responsible position, no.
What with Ukraine going on, he's doing a good job there. I think we should let him do it and not worry about what's going on with Partygate.
A lot of people have lost lives and I think they think it's all gone away and it certainly hasn't.
Well, meanwhile, Phil, MPs have had their first chance to discuss the government's plans to send some of the cross-channel asylum seekers to Rwanda. What did they say?
Well, when we told you about this policy last Thursday, we said there'd be an almighty row in the House of Commons this week, and there sure was.
It is a smuggling gangs, the people smuggling gangs that we are trying to stop. We are trying to break up their business model and end their evil trade.
The criminals won't be deterred because someone they exploited was sent to Rwanda. They don't give money back guarantees, which means they lose money if their victims end up somewhere else instead.
Opposition MPs condemned the policy. Most Tories supported it, but not all.
I do not support the removal to Rwanda policy on the grounds of legality, practicality and efficacy.
There is a moral as well as a financial responsibility to bring these small boats crossings to an end and save lives. And that is what this bold package of measures is seeking to do.
That row will continue, as will speculation about Mr Johnson's future. He's meeting all his MPs tonight here at 8 o'clock to try to persuade them that now is not the time to have a leadership contest.
Phil Hornby in Westminster, thanks very much for that.
Next, more than 1 in 3 people in the southeast could fall into fuel poverty this autumn. That's the grim prospect laid out by energy bosses to a committee of MPs today as they called for more help from the government.
Well, bills have risen by an unprecedented amount and they're likely to go up again in October. One man from Sussex says he's already fallen into debt and fears the situation is only going to get worse. With the story, here's Mary Stanley.
Dennis Hickman from Hove says he faces a £4,000 bill this year for his gas and electricity. He's a self-employed decorator. His wife also works full-time. But he describes his situation as precarious.
What really brought it home was when I had COVID the other week. For some reason I got it bad and it went on for 3 weeks. And I was immediately in loads of debt. I'm right on the edge because, of fuel poverty and the cost of just food at the moment, etc. So now you're sort of constantly looking over your shoulder because you sort of think if anything just goes wrong for a little while, it could put you back under again.
At the start of April, energy prices soared by around 54% for the average household. Today, the extent of the crisis brought home to MPs on a select committee by energy bosses.
We're looking at up to 30 to 40% of people going into fuel poverty when the price goes up again in October. This is unprecedented, so it requires unprecedented action from government at this time.
The government has announced a £200 rebate on bills in October to be paid back over the next few years. But for residents like William Parr from North Thanet, it's not enough.
If you're going to help, give people money to help them out. I mean, I can't understand how, say, people who are on the poverty line, which a lot of people are these days, how can they cope? I have to have a hot meal one day and a cold meal the next because I can't afford to heat up food every day. It's just crazy.
The fear from people around this table is that we're going to have a constituents who will be dying in their own homes this winter.
What we quite often find is people are sometimes embarrassed or reluctant to come to us, but they will go to Citizens Advice or they will go to the food bank, and the food bank can alert us and the Citizens Advice can alert us. All we're doing with people just now is to encourage them to talk to us, to speak to us, because that's the way we can help them.
Energy bosses want the government to fund discounted prices for those struggling to pay, more investment in energy efficiency in homes, before the pressure of winter brings more heartache for bill payers. Mary Stanley, ITV News.
Now you're watching ITV News Meridian. Thank you very much for being with us this evening. Coming up.
The RSPCA is appealing for help to keep wild animals safe after thousands are injured each year by litter.
And although we've had a few showers around today, the outlook is looking very quiet indeed. I'll be back later with all the details.
And you can find more on all of today's stories on our website. itv.com/Meridian is the address. You can call us, of course, details on the screen. And don't forget to follow us on social media.
Next tonight, the wife of a man who died suddenly from a cardiac arrest at the age of just 32 is raising money for a defibrillator for her local community.
Martin May Hills suffered sudden arrhythmic death syndrome at his home in Billingshurst. The condition is linked to an undiagnosed irregular heartbeat. Martin's wife Stephanie says increasing awareness could now save lives. Tom Savidis reports.
Martin May Hills was a happy and energetic husband and father. Without warning, he collapsed from a cardiac arrest and died. He was 32. His wife Stephanie is devastated by his untimely death, but she's determined to raise money for a defibrillator to save other lives in her local community.
I wanted to try and do something positive. Martin was always a very happy, go-lucky, life and soul of the party kind of guy, and just feel like I want to try and do something to raise awareness, but also to fund a defibrillator on our part of Billingshurst.
A post-mortem examination revealed Martin, a father of 4, had suffered sudden arrhythmic death syndrome, known as SADS, when someone unexpectedly dies from a cardiac arrest, but the cause can't be found. It's generally linked to an undiagnosed irregular heartbeat.
We fund research into SADS at the major heart hospitals, looking into reasons why this is happening and trying to find ways to prevent these tragic young deaths, and putting defibrillators in place.
The new housing estate in Billingshurst in Sussex, where Martin lived, does not have a defibrillator nearby. So Martin's family and those who live here have started a fundraising campaign to buy one. Stephanie and her brother Tom will also be doing a moonlight walk from Bognor Pier to Brighton Pier in memory of Martin, who was also known as Hillsy.
Steph and I are just astounded by everyone's support, friends, family. Even though it is a big village, we've got lots of support. Everyone's sort of pulling together.
Stand clear. By raising awareness of sudden arrhythmic death syndrome, Stephanie May Hills is keen to save lives. Tom Savidis, ITV News, Billingshurst.
Well, if you want to know where the nearest defibrillator is to your home, then you can visit our website to access a map which gives you all the details that you will need.
Now, the ITV Evening News continues, of course, with the national and international headlines coming up at 6:30. With details about what's on their programme tonight, here's Mary Nightingale.
The Prime Minister's first address to Parliament after being fined for breaking lockdown rules. We will have reaction and analysis. The next phase of the war in Ukraine is underway as the Russians move to capture the Donbas region. We're live at Anfield ahead of tributes planned for Cristiano Ronaldo after the loss of his baby son. And a big day in the dock for Johnny Depp at the US trial against ex-wife Amber Heard. Well, do join me for those stories and more at 6:30.
Thanks, Mary. In other news, a 19th arrest has been made by police investigating motorbike thefts across Medway. Since the 1st of January, more than 100 have been reported stolen. Around 50 of those have been recovered. The latest arrest saw a 17-year-old boy charged with theft.
Venues across Brighton and Hove have been handed new food hygiene ratings. Restaurants, pubs and food outlets who've been inspected will see their results listed on the Food Agency's website. Almost 2,000 scored 5, seen as very good. Only 1 was rated as 0, meaning it required urgent improvement.
Train ticket prices are being cut for April and May to encourage people to get back on the rails. The government has reduced costs by as much as half on selected tickets in its Great British Rail sale. It's an effort to tackle cost of living pressures, and tickets from Canterbury to London St Pancras can now be purchased for as little as £6.40.
Hare coursing across the southeast has fallen by nearly a third. Kent police say it's due to the success of a borderless scheme among forces. They teamed up with 6 others to crack down on the rural crime.
That might be surprising, but one of the biggest dangers to wildlife is actually litter. So as the weather warms up and we've been spending more time outside, the RSPCA is asking us to make sure we take all of our rubbish home.
Well, the charity has received over 7,500 calls over the last 2 years alone about injured animals who've been hurt by things including discarded bottles and plastic bags. With more, here's Nick Smith.
At this RSPCA rescue centre, spring is usually a busy time of year, as many native species start giving birth to young. And animals like this hedgehog begin to wake up from their long winter hibernation. But it also means more humans are out exploring the countryside, and unfortunately, some are still choosing to leave their rubbish behind. It's not just unsightly, it can also wreak havoc on local wildlife.
Species such as foxes, they like to go out and investigate things, and they will go and stick their heads in all sorts of things, including food waste type litter. We get quite a lot of swans in who have swallowed fishing hooks and fishing line and things like that. They also get their legs caught in it, and the line can really bury deep into their skin, and that can quite often cause infections.
In fact, across our region last year, the RSPCA received 154 litter-related calls in Kent and 131 in East Sussex. The problems caused by litter also reaches far beyond injuries through chance animal encounters. When plastic or hazardous waste breaks down and seeps into the soil and waterways, it can start to impact whole ecosystems.
Microplastics get into the soil, this then hinders the correct plants growing, which then affects the insects that feed on those plants, which then in turn affects all the things that eat the insects, such as the hedgehogs and the birds and things like that. So it's really crucial that we try and keep these things away from our soil and try and maintain the balance.
And it's not just out in the countryside where litter poses a threat to animals. Thousands of dogs suffer injuries due to discarded waste in parks each and every year. Russ Leith faced a hefty vet bill when his dog Millie stepped on what he suspects was broken glass. He now voluntarily organises litter picks to avoid other pets facing the same fate.
It got infected twice, and she had lots of antibiotics, several trips to the vet, and we probably spent the best part of £900 on that recovery, and it took quite a while as well. She was limping around in a sort of orthopaedic boot for a while that she was quite unhappy with. I think it was kind of embarrassing her. It probably felt uncomfortable, and she was constantly shaking her paw.
Animal charities want the exposure of the harms of litter to make people think twice when tempted to just drop their waste in green spaces. Or to go one step further and take a few spare bin bags out on their walks, picking up the litter they come across before it puts any wildlife in danger. Nick Smith, ITV News.
And on to League One, where with just 2 matches to go for Gillingham, it looks like their fight against relegation will go right to the wire. The Gills are sitting just 1 point and 1 place above the drop zone. After drawing with the team just below them yesterday, Andrew Pate kicks off our roundup with a special guest at the Priestfield Stadium.
Small businesses and local teams, the heart of our communities. eBay sponsors ITV Regional Sport Reports.
"11-year-old Ukrainian refugee Daniel Lysak was the star of the show as he led Gillingham out. The fans showing their support for the youngster who escaped Ukraine with his mother and is now with a host family in Folkestone. On the pitch, it wasn't such a friendly affair. Both sides getting a player sent off for this challenge. Gillingham's Charlie Kelman and Fleetwood's Paddy Lane seeing red after lunging in. It means Kelman misses Gill's final 2 games against Portsmouth and Rotherham, unless the club are successful with an appeal.
Crawley Town looks set to close their season in fine form after securing a 5th win in their last 6 games. Following victory over Walsall, thanks to Isaac Hutchinson's second-half goal, the Reds now sit in 12th place, with boss John Yems praising his side's mentality and saying this is a squad that can do better next season. In cricket, Kent might have suffered defeat in their county championship match against Lancashire, eventually losing by 10 wickets. But it was Kent batsman Ben Compton who made the biggest impact. Having been on the field for every minute of the match, Compton batted for 856 minutes and faced 629 balls, a county championship record. After an unbeaten first innings of 104, he was immediately asked to follow on and responded with a knock of 115. And finally, big congratulations to Lottie Adams. You may remember we featured the 11-year-old show jumper from Hurstpier Point in Sussex earlier this year. Well, I'm delighted to say she and horse Lexi have just won first place in the 1 metre challenge at the Pony Club National Spring Championships. Very well done, Lottie, and of course, Lexi.
Absolutely, Sarah, thank you very much. Today was more like weather for ducks in places, wasn't it, really? A bit of rain here and there, but it brings us nicely to this story because a video has been released of a mother duck and her ducklings who were escorted across roads to safety by the East Sussex Wildlife Rescue Service.
Well, the mum had hatched her babies in a caravan park near Uckfield and volunteers stepped in to help when she tried to lead them to a pond which was a quarter of a mile away. They and the park residents guided the family and stopped the traffic for quite a long time, I hear, to help them reach their destination.
Well, all 14 ducklings are safe, thankfully. A 15th that was rescued is now being looked after at the charity's casualty centre. It needed a little bit of TLC over the bank holiday weekend, but it is on the mend, we are told. So very nice story.
I hope they reunite the 15th with the rest of them. I mean, that would be sad if they didn't.
Yeah, where was that? And that was at Uckfield. Yes,
yeah, we'll have to find out.
Which is now Duckfield, obviously, for the purposes of this story. Right, so let's get a check on the weather forecast, find out whether it is indeed weather for ducks. With the details for us this evening, here's Pip.
Feels like home, whatever the weather. Valent Boilers and Heat Pumps sponsors ITV Meridian Weather.
Hello there. Well, aside from a few showers around today, the next few days are looking pretty quiet. A lot of dry weather in the forecast, some decent sunny spells, but it will feel fairly cool at times with a fairly keen easterly breeze. So this is the pressure sequence through the next few days. You can see low pressure trying to make some headway initially, but it doesn't get very far. And in fact, it won't be until Sunday where we may just see a little feature running up from the south there. But that is still a long way off. Out there at the moment, any residual daytime showers gradually moving away westwards, and thereafter we're looking at dry conditions overnight. Cloud coming and going and temperatures, well, not too chilly. I think frost free for all of us, probably no lower than 5 or 6 degrees by dawn. And then tomorrow morning, well, a bit of cloud around initially, but it will gradually thin and break. Lots of lovely sunshine coming through as we head our way into the afternoon, and that will be reflected in the temperatures inland at least. A little up on today's values, peaking quite comfortably at 16 or 17 degrees, but always fresher around the coast, and particularly so on the East Kent coast, with an onshore breeze here. High tides for tomorrow then for Brighton there around 2 in the morning and just before 2:30 in the afternoon. And then looking ahead to the next few days with the ongoing risk of 1 or 2 very light showers, but actually the bulk of the next few days, lots of dry weather, some decent sunny spells and temperatures, well, a little above average on the face of it, feeling fresher though in that keen easterly breeze.
Valent sponsors ITV Meridian Weather.
Well, it's looking nice tomorrow at least, isn't it? Yeah. Nice sunshine. And just a moment, the ITV Evening News tonight. That's with Mary Nightingale.
That's it from us for the time being. I'm back with your late update just after 10:30 this evening. But for now, from all the team here, thank you very much for watching. Have a great evening. Bye-bye.
Good night.